What is up? Welcome into yet another edition of the Ben Garcia Show. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day, however you're watching. However you're following the show, we appreciate you doing so, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or for free on the iHeartRadio app. We appreciate that as well. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, tell a friend if you're feeling really frisky enough about the Ben Garcia Show, but I'll leave that last one up to you. If you're watching on YouTube, just know I adore you. We appreciate that. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe there as well. There's a lot of things to get to. You don't want to hear me yap forever in an introduction. So without further ado, let's get into our top story of the day. So before I dive really deep into the nitty-gritty of the Miami Dolphins Tennessee Titans game from last night, I just want to throw out there what my main takeaway was. And that is very simply, Tua Tagovailoa, whether you like it or not, is without a doubt coming back this season. This Miami Dolphins team is putrid. And it's actually allowed me to gain a ton of respect for Tua Tagovailoa. And allow me to really gain and give a lot of just hat tips to Tua Tagovailoa. This offense is clearly very much about predicated on Tua Tagovailoa's ability to pass the ball. Now listen. Devon Achan's awesome. Tyreek Hill's awesome. Jalen Waddle's awesome. But at the end of the day, you need someone to throw you the football. And to everyone, it's like, oh, this is Mike McDaniel, he's doing the heavy lifting. Or Tua Tagovailoa, he's doing the heavy lifting. Or whoever it was. Clearly, it's a combination of everything. This is not the Kyle Shanahan San Francisco 49ers. You can't just plug any quarterback into the system and have it work. For the most part, for the 49ers, CJ Beathard had success, Nick Mullins had success, Jimmy G made it to a Super Bowl, Brock Purdy made it to a Super Bowl. There's been a revolving door of guys who have at least looked competent in the Kyle Shanahan scheme. Mike McDaniel is clearly a step under Kyle Shanahan. I know for a long time I had trounced him as one of the best young head coaches in the NFL, and that's true. But I didn't necessarily really go after the, wow, Tua Tagovailoa actually means a ton to this offense. I understand statistically it's easy just to look and say, what are you talking about? But this team, without Tua Tagovailoa, who is a capable NFL quarterback, is putrid on offense. They are not even serviceable by any means. And you know what happens when you're not serviceable? Or your pants get pulled down in front of a national audience on Monday Night Football while your offense looks historically bad? People get fired. GMs get fired. Coaches get fired. And no one wants to deal with that aspect on what possibly could come if the season from hell really comes to fruition for the Miami Dolphins. So with that being said, I might not agree with it. I might not do it if I was Tua Tagovailoa. It's obviously his decision, and I will respect whatever decision Tua Tagovailoa has to make about coming back or not. Because it's not my life, it's not my livelihood, it's not my money. I get it at the end of the day. Even if it's something that I wouldn't do. At this point, I do believe the Miami Dolphins, front office, head coach, you name it, is going to rush Tua Tagovailoa back on the field as soon as it feels like it's good enough for him to do so. They're not going to wait the full year. As soon as he's available to come off of IR and he shows no symptoms of a concussion or whatever, the first glance at it, he will be back in the Miami Dolphins starting lineup. He will be back as the starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. That's just what's going to happen. Because although we all want to worry about Tua Tagovailoa's health, myself, whatever, at the end of the day, coaches get fired when their side of the ball is not producing any sort of offense against a Titans team that was winless last night before this game. Losing to Mason Rudolph is inexcusable, even if you have Tyler Huntley. Tyler Huntley, Mason Rudolph, potato, they're the same guy. And when you have clearly the advantage in the weapons department, you cannot get annihilated like you did. Mike McDaniel is kind of looking like a second-tier head coach right now. He's not. He clearly is just like many head coaches who needs a quarterback, but they're going to rush Tua Tagovailoa back. Because if this season from hell continues from the Miami Dolphins, there is going to be serious implications at the end of the year. Whether it's the head coach potentially losing his job, although I would be strongly against that, or it's the general manager losing his job. This Miami Dolphins team has weapons everywhere. And it's insanity that even last night they couldn't move the ball at all. The offensive line looks bad. And yet with all these weapons, you can't even get them the ball. That's how much Tua Tagovailoa meant. And I think it even kind of sells Tua Tagovailoa as a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, given how bad the Miami Dolphins are without him. Now that we see how bad this offensive line is, now that we see that Mike McDaniel's system isn't exactly quarterback proof, and now that we've seen, even when the other team is starting a second-tier quarterback, they can't win. That's how much Tua Tagovailoa means to this team. And that's why they're 1,000% going to rush him back, whether we agree with it or not, whether we think we saw the end of Tua Tagovailoa in the NFL or not. He is 1,000% coming back. It's not the right decision. I would wait on it. But this is exactly what the Miami Dolphins are going to have to do to help salvage their reputation as an offensive-driven team that cannot even get off the field at times. And here's what I'll say about this. This is a Miami Dolphins issue. This is not a Tua Tagovailoa issue. The Miami Dolphins knew darn good and well how injury-prone and the potential of Tua Tagovailoa being one more concussion away from being potentially out of the NFL. And still they did nothing in the backup quarterback department. Imagine how serviceable this team would be if they had a Tyrod Taylor, if they had their own Colt McCoy when Colt McCoy was a serviceable quarterback, a Ryan Fitzpatrick-esque player to at least make this offense look serviceable. You knew Skylar Thompson wasn't good enough. We all saw it. The Skylar Thompson experience is over. We know Tyler Huntley is in a certain system a serviceable quarterback, but he doesn't fit this scheme. There is so many other issues with the Miami Dolphins, and the clear travesty and idiocracy to not see that this could be a potential result looming in the regular season and not signing a capable backup quarterback, and they're out there, you just got to be willing to pay for it. It's your own fault for giving Tua Tagovailoa as much as money as you did. I wouldn't have given him that much, even how he's shown how valuable he is this offense. But you still have to fork over the money for an insurance policy. And this team did not have Tua Tagovailoa insurance. They didn't go after a Tyrod Taylor. They didn't go after a Mason Rudolph who was fine enough and good enough to win last night. And that's a front office issue. This is a clear misstep by the Miami Dolphins front office. The fact that they didn't see this possibility coming makes it inexcusable. Now, if they go get a guy like a Tyrod Taylor, who I've mentioned, like a better backup quarterback, like a Dorian Thompson-Robinson, like a Blaine Gabbert of the world, like a Chase Daniel of the world, and they're still bad, you can at least defend them and say, listen, they did everything they could. But this is a clear miscalculation by the Miami Dolphins front office. And the season from hell is going to continue because there is no answer long-term or short-term until Tua Tagovailoa is back in the fold. I want to take a little bit of time to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs and Los Angeles Chargers. There's a lot of speculation of the Kansas City Chiefs that they're not as good as they are, that Patrick Mahomes hasn't been very good this year, that their weapons that are now starting to come off the board, Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown, those guys aren't here right now. And yet, they still continue winning games. If you are looking for the ding-dong, the witch is dead on the Kansas City Chiefs, look somewhere else. because it ain't happening. I understand that Patrick Mahomes hasn't been very good this year. And last year, even when he was having one of his mediocre-esque seasons for Patrick Mahomes' standards, I still triumphed and said the guy should be the MVP because he's doing it with nothing for weapons. Travis Kelce, last year during the regular season, wasn't Travis Kelce future Hall of Famer-esque. He was in the playoffs. He was not in the regular season. And now, he's kind of running it back because Rashee Rice is now gone, and Isaiah Pacheco is now gone, and Hollywood Brown is now gone. And yet they're still undefeated. And there is going to be a point in this Kansas City Chiefs offense where there's going to be a straw that breaks the camel's back to where they're just not as elite as we all thought they might be this year. But here's the thing. If you're looking for this team to die anytime soon, it's not going to. They're still the Super Bowl favorites. They still demand excellence. And for whatever it's worth, this is not an offensive-driven team. This is a defensive-driven team with the best quarterback in the NFL on the offensive side of the ball. It is very similar to those early 2000s Patriots teams, where those teams were led by defense, where those teams were led by Bill Belichick's brain. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum, you had what would be the future greatest quarterback of all time directing the offense. So if you needed a 2-minute score, you could still do it. But this is ultimately why the Kansas City Chiefs are still the Super Bowl favorites. And if you're like me and you pick someone else in the preseason and you're not necessarily feeling bad about it, but you understand that you're probably just going to be wrong, there are reports that the Kansas City Chiefs, although being up 4-0, are frustrated. Patrick Mahomes wants to get Travis Kelce the ball. Brett Veach is angry at guys for dropping passes. Whatever it may be, this team, although 4-0, is not championing around their Super Bowl rings or championing around their championship pedigree. They just continue to win games. And to everyone that gets frustrated, and that sometimes I do as well, with the feels like unnecessary flags or flag-happy referees that at times does seem like it's aiding more towards the Kansas City Chiefs from the officials. So what? So what? For years, everyone complained that Tom Brady got the best whistle in the NFL. So what? He is Patrick Mahomes at this point, a world-renowned fighter. If you're trying to get a cross-sport reference, Patrick Mahomes is the champion in boxing, in UFC, and you have to knock out the champion. You're not going to get help from judges unless, of course, you dominate a fight and win the championship belt. If you want to beat the champion, you got to knock out the champion. And at times that means they're getting a good whistle, whether it's Patrick Mahomes, whether it's Tom Brady. But this whole crybaby speculation of the Kansas City Chiefs, are you kidding me? Another whistle. Oh, the officials are on their side. That is loser mentality. Have you ever thought that maybe they're just better than you? Have you ever thought that? Maybe that they just demand excellence. And that's what has happened. Whether it's Brett Veach, whether it's Andy Reid, whether it's Travis Kelce, who's not getting his this year and not freaking out over it because he understands that there's a common goal. That is what is happening with the Kansas City Chiefs. And I know you're frustrated. No one liked the winners that were the New England Patriots either. They were frustrating. It was every year the Tom Brady-led Patriots are going to come and smother everyone else all season long. And now it feels like we didn't get a break from that. We have that now again with the Kansas City Chiefs. And now you have the speculation of, oh, well, it's frustrating because they get calls from the officials. Or my favorite argument for the Kansas City Chiefs, well, they're just not very good. They're a couple of plays away from being 0-4. Oh, so you mean they're situationally amazing? Oh, you mean every game looks the same? Oh, you mean they play to their terms of football. They don't let the other team dictate the game. At some point, you just have to start giving credit where it's due to the Kansas City Chiefs for winning every game the same way. It doesn't matter if they're down and out. It doesn't matter if Patrick Mahomes is throwing a couple interceptions. It doesn't matter what player is out. They have you play their brand of football, and you can't hang with it. And if you're going to complain about it, go ahead. But just understand that you're not losing because it's the officials, or you're not losing because the Chiefs are just getting lucky, and you're not losing because everyone is overblowing and overhyping Patrick Mahomes. I've heard that as well. You're losing, and get this through your head, try this out for size. You're losing because the Kansas City Chiefs are just better, and every game looks the same. And they look very similar to the early dynasty New England Patriots, where defense led this team, and they had an all-pro, elite-level, first-ballot future Hall of Famer quarterback leading the offense, so that in any 2-minute drill or situation where he needs just a shot downfield to get them back in the game or to win the game, they can do that. It's not because they're getting lucky. At some point, just admit that they're situationally better than your team week in and week out. Just admit it. And just admit that they're just better than you. They're just better than your team. And instead of complaining about flags, and instead of complaining about Patrick Mahomes, and instead of complaining about Travis Kelce, and instead of complaining about Taylor Swift, how about you just demand better from your team? How about you just demand better from your organization? And not just completely discount everything the Kansas City Chiefs have been doing. Because here's the problem. Everyone has tried to find, whether it's an analyst, I guess outside of Nick Wright, but whether it's an analyst or an opinionist or some talking head like myself. I said it last year. I thought the Chiefs are going to pull back. Every time we try to discount the Chiefs, what do? Very similar to the dynasty New England Patriots. Just found ways to win. And discounting them for that is just pure insanity. Because situationally, they're amazing. Because every game is played the same. They make you play football on their terms. And they don't care who gets it. And I guarantee you this. Whether they swing a deal for a guy like Davante Adams that I think is nonsense. It doesn't matter who they have. They could just be running Juju Smith-Schuster out there and Kareem Hunt and Carson Steele, and they'll still win. And just quick side note for the Kansas City Chiefs. The idea, just really quickly, and this will be a little rag on the Kansas City Chiefs, but I don't really mean it like that. The idea that the Las Vegas Raiders would ever trade Davante Adams to the Kansas City Chiefs is just idiocracy. It's clickbait. It doesn't make any sense. And here's why. This is not only an in-division rival that can't stand the Kansas City Chiefs. They are clear and utter dysfunction. And you know what could really add to the Chiefs' ability to win the Super Bowl or really put them over the top? Give them an all-pro wide receiver. Give them a future Hall of Famer wide receiver. After you, Las Vegas Raiders players, had a Kermit the Frog dressed up as Patrick Mahomes and making fun of him and poking fun at his voice and poking fun at Patrick Mahomes, you think now they're going to help the Chiefs? You think before they've even played a game against the Chiefs, they want Davante Adams out there running routes on them? That's insanity. The Chiefs could offer an insane load of picks for Davante Adams. It won't happen, but let's just say, for instance, they could. The Las Vegas Raiders would never do that deal. They would look like a buffoon of an organization who took the entire preseason, or at least chunks of the preseason, to poke fun at the best quarterback in the NFL, dressing him up as Kermit the Frog and making fun of his voice. And now you think they're going to help them? Can you imagine what kind of buffoons the Raiders would look like on national television in front of everyone if the Chiefs win another Super Bowl and they are put over the top because the Las Vegas Raiders gave them Davante Adams? Devontae Adams is going to get traded. I absolutely believe that. I said that before the season started. But there's no chance he'll be a Kansas City Chief. They're division rivals. They don't like each other. They have spent the offseason making fun of Patrick Mahomes. And the last thing they want to do is be the reason the Kansas City Chiefs win yet another Super Bowl. All right, let's wrap up the show talking some of the Philadelphia Eagles, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because I just want to talk about where I was right again. You know, over the weekend, I had a very funny, viral moment. I picked the Cardinals to destroy the Commanders, and the complete inverse happened, and I've deserved every bit of crow that I've been eating since then. But there are some things I've been very right about. I was right about the Niners. They look to be regressing. Even though I said they'll make the playoffs, I said they're going to regress. I was right about the Cincinnati Bengals. I have serious worries about them making the playoffs, even if they beat the Carolina Panthers, and it didn't look particularly great doing so. And another take I feel like I was right about. The Philadelphia Eagles are just nonsense. They are so infuriating. And I tried to explain to every Eagle fan that would listen to me, and to their credit, some did, but most didn't. And this is where I'm going to kind of rub it in the face of Eagles fans a little bit. I've tried to explain profusely that a running back is not going to solve the Philadelphia Eagles' problems. Sure, it'll make them more dynamic. It'll make them more fun to watch. And I understand A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith weren't in this game. But the issue for the Philadelphia Eagles last year was not the offense. You fired Brian Johnson. Awesome. Guess who Jaden Daniels' quarterback coach is? I'll let you look that one up. It's Brian Johnson. You add Kellen Moore to the mix, who was let go of Dallas. After having a very good season with Dallas, they let him go. What does that tell you? They don't value Kellen Moore. You went through all these things on offense to try to make you more dynamic, and it didn't matter. Because the issue for the Eagles has always been two things, and they didn't address either of them. And it's so infuriating because I was so clearly right on the Eagles, and they might make the playoffs because they have so much talent that it would be a travesty if they didn't make the playoffs. But they're not winning a single game in the playoffs against a competent coach, a competent quarterback, and a competent organization. They're just not. This team is pathetic. They are. And they had two issues that they didn't address in the offseason that I kept on pounding the table to say, address these. Fire Nick Sirianni and fix the secondary. The two biggest issues for the Eagles last year are still the two biggest issues. Who would have thought Cooper DeJean, who everyone was pounding the table for Howie Roseman, he's an elite, electric general manager. Howie Roseman is on like his fourth head coach. Cooper DeJean is not playing. Their secondary looks abysmal. Again. And then you want to take it to Nick Sirianni. Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni clearly don't like each other. We've talked about that. That's been wildly reported. They have a drift between each other. They don't like each other. Nick Sirianni is still making boneheaded decisions. He can't beat Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It doesn't matter who's the quarterback of that team. They can't beat him. The Saints versus Eagles game last week, we're probably talking about firing Nick Sirianni last week if Saquon Barkley doesn't bail them out. He's a buffoon of a head coach. He's a character on the sidelines. He's not mature. He's not a leader amongst men. He's a fool. And at times, it just becomes cringeworthy how much of an immature head coach this guy acts like. Their defense has issues on the back end, and they didn't fix any of them. Sure, one of their first-round picks doesn't look to be a complete bust as of right now. But Cooper DeJean can't get on the field. And all of their free agent signings have basically been bad. Bryce Huff has been invisible. Remember, Howie Roseman chose Bryce Huff over Hassan Reddick. That's what happened. And Howie Roseman doesn't get nearly the amount of criticism that he deserves. At this point, and I'm just going to say it, Howie Roseman must have a deal with the media, a blood oath that he has sworn by the ESPNs or the Fox Sportses of the world that he is not allowed to be criticized. Because largely, players have not panned out under Howie Roseman. If I'm not mistaken, Doug Peterson, I think he might have hired Chip Kelly, this new head coach, Nick Sirianni. He's just going through head coaches. And he's going to have to fire another head coach. General managers do not get this many head coaches as Howie Roseman has had. And he's going to get another shot. He traded for Jahan Dotson. And I went on the air. I went on this channel. And I said, guys, Jahan Dotson's not good. You just gave up a third-round pick for Jahan Dotson. And there's a reason. There's a reason why the Commanders traded him in division. It was so stupendously obvious. It was so obvious. And still you had Eagles fans saying, Howie did it again. It drives me insane. The infatuation with Howie Roseman, who has largely gotten away with a lot of different blunders. Players, his draft picks. Nakobe Dean's not great. The cornerback, Keely Ringo's not great. Cooper DeJean can't get on the field. I mean, at some point, we got to hold Howie Roseman accountable. It's not just Nick Sirianni. Yes, he is a buffoon, and he's going to take the fall for this. Howie Roseman is not. But at some point, when are we just going to say Howie Roseman is Mel Kiper Jr. if he was a general manager? The one reason why the media continues to infatuate and just be splendid and thrill us over Howie Roseman is because his mock drafts and his trades look a lot like things you see on ESPN. That's why. And the fact that they haven't addressed the elephant in the room of Nick Sirianni's clear incompetence is another failure on Howie Roseman's part. I know it's easy to point the blame game at Nick Sirianni, but we need to take a clear, hard look at Howie Roseman's failure as a general manager. Multiple whiffs in the draft, multiple bad trades, and he is going to have to hire yet another head coach. Look around the league. General managers, for the large part, do not get this many swings at a head coach. Normally, they get canned. And the inability that was so clear and obvious that this pass defense was not just getting fixed because James Bradbury isn't ruining it anymore. There's issues everywhere. This defense doesn't even look fierce anymore. And Bryce Huff has been a disaster. And letting Hassan Reddick go was clearly a disaster. And Nakobe Dean's been bad. And Cooper DeJean can't get on the field. And Darius Slay looks to be regressing. This Eagles team has so many issues. They have so many consequences coming their way. And the failure to not also realize that Howie Roseman has a clear hand in the shortcomings of the Philadelphia Eagles and that it's not just Nick Sirianni is a catastrophe all in its own that Eagles fans, the media, and more people need to talk about. Because it's easy to blame Nick Sirianni, but it ain't just him. If you go back to the clear two issues that I pointed out for the Philadelphia Eagles this year and said this is why they're going to severely regress and why they will not win a singular playoff game if they even get it that far, but they should because they have so much talent, is Howie Roseman. All roads lead back to Howie Roseman. The head coach should have been fired. Howie Roseman should have done that. He should have pulled the trigger, but he knows most GMs don't get swings at head coaches as many as he's had, and the defense never got fixed. Instead, we drafted the flashy guy in Cooper DeJean who had some clear question marks. There's a reason why he fell in the draft, and the year prior to that, it's almost like he did no scouting and just decided, let's just draft everyone on Georgia. They were good, and that didn't work out. The clear shortcomings of the Philadelphia Eagles were so predictable. And it's not just Nick Sirianni that deserves a big old slice of blame pie, but it's also Howie Roseman. And people need to recognize that. Thanks so much for tuning into the Ben Garcia Show. We appreciate you guys making us a part of your day. I can't wait to get more content out to you guys later this week. Probably do a reaction, potentially, to the Thursday Night Football game. We'll get that out to you guys Friday morning. A lot of different things in the works. Thank you so much for continuously growing the Ben Garcia Show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Tell a friend if you're watching on YouTube. I love you more than anyone who listens. That's a lie. Love all my listeners and followers the same. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe on there. Tell a friend about the Ben Garcia Show. I cannot wait to talk to you guys soon enough again. Thanks for tuning in. And I'm Benjamin Garcia, and it's been the Ben Garcia Show.